Guys, I don't know what's happening right now, but men our age are literally evolving backwards. A new study came out and they found out that 31%, that's almost 1 in 3 of Gen Z men believe that a woman should always obey her husband. 1/3 of Gen Z men, that's like 1 in 3, believe that a husband should always have final word on important decisions. What the fuck? They said that Gen Z men born between 1997 and 2012 were twice as likely as baby boom men, so men born between 1946 and 1964, to have traditional views on decision making within a marriage. That's compared to 13% of baby boomer men. Guys, look at the graph. That is baby boomers. That's Gen X. That's millennials. That's Gen Z.
Bitch, I'm looking at myself. I decided to become a YouTuber and I have so much stuff to say and I'm like getting into it now. So don't look at yourself. That's my first thing. Okay. Clavicular is NRX. That's the video. Just kidding. You might be wondering a little bit about like what that might mean. And I have a story to tell you. Are you in for a hoot or not? You know, clavicular is NRX and Peter Thiel knows it. And it's a little bit insane that we're at this point. To start, we have to talk about an infamous guy. You might know him. You might hate him. You should hate him. Yes, he's kind of the origin of the kind of hell we're living in today. Nick Land. Let's talk about it. So picture this British dude in the 90s and he looked very off-putting. He brought an off-putting vibe to the function and he wasn't ashamed of that whatsoever. This was a British philosopher who was obsessed with the works of Deleuze and Guattari. And buddy, same. It's so crazy how he turned out so different though. His influence comes from a lot of works that talked about how society was fracturing into complexity, I would say. They talked a lot about this term called deterritorialization. Editing, Zena, can you put it here? And that essentially discusses the breakdown of categories within a society. Think about how gender roles were super rigid in the past. And over time, slowly but surely, categories like woman, man began to sort of blend. They weren't as strict and rigid because of tolerance and because kind of we've been moving that way over the past couple hundred years. There's not many boundaries as to how people act and categorize themselves anymore. Does that make sense? Am I rambling? Do you get it? I feel like you get it. We're going to move on. So he was known for his interpretation of a term called accelerationism. This is essentially the idea that we need to speed up our processes in society, specifically processes that have to do with technology and capitalism. The guys who agreed with this form of thought were branded under the term NRX. NRX. That was this guy, and he taught at the University of Warwick. Am I right in saying that? Yes. And this guy wasn't your average Joe professor. How do I start? He formulated this group called the CCRU. Nick Land, Mark Fischer, Sadie Plant, #feminism, and Kodwo Ishan. I hope I'm saying that right, Kodwo, but don't even know if you're a good guy. I really can't say that you're a good guy. This was an experimental research collective founded in the University of Warwick in the mid-90s. It operated on the fringe of academia and blended philosophy, art, rave culture, and speculative theory. This shit was very speculative, in fact, because their goals were to explore the intersection of technology, capitalism, and culture. Picture this. You walk into a lecture and suddenly you're hearing extremely loud electronic music. The use of rave aesthetics and club culture in academic presentations, not lectures, presentations. Lectures were structured more like performance rituals rather than conventional teaching. There was a heavy use of science fiction, cyberpunk imagery, which, guys, we'll get into that later, and occult symbolism. There's a lot to unpack here, especially in lieu of recent events. So the goal of these lectures was essentially for these guys to transgress the regular, traditional lecture school categories in general. Let me break that down because that sounds like a bunch of mumbo jumbo. So these guys believed that traditional academic discourse slowed down thought, and they wanted to mimic the speed and chaos of technological culture. Rave music and sensory overload were meant to simulate the information saturation of modern day capitalism. And this is kind of the crux of accelerationist theory. These guys truly, and I mean truly, want to speed up all categories. They kind of wanted to blur the distinction between lecture and party and formal and informal, because they realized that these are all very human things, designating meaning to these social entities. These guys were really big anti-society ass niggas. Am I allowed to say that? Yes, I am. They didn't like the way that human society kind of oriented itself around meaning. What they thought was higher than that was technology and its capacity to propel things forward. And they weren't necessarily wrong in that. Automation is truly what society has oriented itself around for the past forever. If you think about it, the speeding up of productive processes can essentially define every single era of human history, from agriculture to the Industrial Revolution age to the digital age. We seem to reflect the productive capacities of any given time that we're existing in. These guys realized that something big was coming, this omega point, this point of no return where capitalism would consume all of it, consume society, consume culture, and it would become the thing, the singularity. But that's the fun that's still yet to come. So reactions to these kind of lectures varied widely, okay? Some students found the environment exciting and innovative. They're like, yes, I love jungle music and science, tech, and occultism. While others thought it was chaotic or unserious. So eventually this led to Nick Land's break from academia. By the late 1990s, Land's philosophy became increasingly radical. His writing began to argue that capitalism and technology were autonomous forces beyond human control. He left Warwick in the late 1990s and later relocated to China. After leaving academia, his work increasingly intersected with internet political movements, which is exactly what he wanted. So then we got to get into another guy in the CCRU. You might have remembered me mentioning him, Mark Fischer. This angel, man. This guy was a part of this strange collective for a time, and you might be thinking, then how is he a good guy? This got to be one of the bad guys. No, guys. Y'all, this is all part of the story arc. But basically, Mark Fischer was born in 1968. He was a cultural theorist and writer, and he was also a part of the CCRU and later became famous for his book, and the Holy Grail, I might add, Capitalist Realism, published in 2009. In regards to their philosophical differences, Land and Fischer diverged sharply. Okay, Nick Land believed that capitalism was an unstoppable evolutionary force, supported accelerating technological capitalism, and eventually moved toward anti-democratic political theories. We will get to that, guys. Land was more of a accelerate capitalism at any cost. Mark Fischer rather argued that capitalism was something that we should critique. He argued that society had difficulty imagining alternatives to capitalism, and he remained committed to left-wing politics and equality. This guy was like, hey, maybe let's not make a technocracy on Earth. Maybe let's just try to not do that and stop. No, this thing is not inevitable. We can't actually stop capitalism from taking over the world. Okay? This split essentially reflects, in my opinion, the red pill and blue pill, but it reflects two interpretations of the same observation. Fischer's interpretation was that capitalism dominates culture and this is a problem, while Land argues that capitalism dominates culture because it's an unstoppable evolutionary process. Now, my take kind of merges the two. So we'll get to that soon, guys. They weren't ready for me, that's why I came a little bit later in the scheme of things. So Fischer's death. Guys, I don't want to talk about this. This makes me very sad. Mark Fischer died by suicide in 2017 after a long struggle with severe depression. Many commentators connect this struggle to themes he wrote about, including mental health under neoliberal capitalism. The widely accepted explanation is that his death was related to personal mental health struggles. This guy encountered some very potent ideas about capitalism and the way that it was moving. And as we're going to see, they weren't necessarily wrong. In fact, a lot of what they predicted of capitalism and how it was going to move was very correct and ended up defining the point that we are in society right now. So it would not surprise me if that was heavy for Mark Fischer, especially knowing that anti-capitalist rhetoric has exceedingly been losing out to neo-fascistic rhetoric that is more coinciding with Land and his strange, odd, peculiar beliefs. So now we got to get into accelerationism. What is this? According to Land, accelerationism argues that the processes driving capitalism and technology should be intensified rather than slowed down. His version is sometimes called right accelerationism. His thesis is that capitalism behaves like a self-organizing intelligence. Technological development increases economic complexity. Eventually, whether we like it or not, capitalism will evolve into a post-human technological system. Think about the way that machines currently displace human labor and how the system of capitalism over time tends to displace more work than it creates. This is essentially a positive feedback loop where technology is introduced into the system, adopted by the system, and then becomes the standard until new, more innovative, more efficient technology is introduced and the cycle continues. The problem and defining tenet of capitalism is that whoever is more efficient will always dominate. As soon as something faster, something more productive is introduced into the labor force, it every single time will outplace its opponents. This is because capitalism works off of efficiency. Efficiency is embedded within this system. Others either have to get on board or get beat out the competition. So what would acceleration actually look like? This would be rapid automation, AI development, global markets operating beyond political control, and the collapse of a traditional state government altogether. The way that this system works best is if political struggle is not in the picture. When we're focused on things like DEI and social rights and, equality, this slows down the ability for capital to accrue faster and faster and faster, more and more and more displaced human beings, right? When we try to pull back this system that innately wants to capitalize and grow, we're slowing down what Nick Land sees as the inevitable. In Land's view, capitalism eventually becomes something like a machine intelligence running the entire economy. And we already see this in certain ways. We can look at things like trading, right? We notice that technology has become a really huge player in algorithmic trading. This is an instance where instead of human beings running the show, it's machinery, it's systems. Now let's get to the juice of it. Let's get to the meat of it. Let's get to the core. What is NRX? So Nick Land is the guy that kind of amplified this theory. He's the one who popularized it. While Moldbug is like the Discord mod in the background, in the shadows. Hence his literal coin name, whatever, is Mencius Moldbug. Like moldy bug, ew, gross, okay? NRX critiques modern liberal democracy and proposes replacing it with hierarchical governance structures. Now, why might they want this? Things work much easier for capitalism and this propelling towards God knows what when there isn't deliberation. Democracy means that there are people with ideas who can decide against the future, that is techno-capital singularity. NRX doesn't want that. NRX thinkers argue that democracy produces short-term decision-making, it incentivizes political pandering, human rights, who needs those? And creates inefficient governance. And the cathedral is a term they use to describe elite institutions shaping ideology. This includes universities, media, and bureaucracies. So essentially what they believe is that people are stupid as fuck. And AI, technology, is smarter. It is the future. It is what's coming. People are like puppets. We kind of regurgitate the ideology that's fed down our throats. It's the capitalists who run the show, who tell us what to think. CNN, MSNBC, Fox News. This is where we get our opinions that we use to participate in democratic political systems. And Land's like, fuck that, bro. Nah. Let the AI bot in charge and make it capitalist too. And here I gotta pause because it's like, are we wrong? Yes, but also no. People really are followers, especially in a world where it's convenient not to think. People regurgitate scripts. It's convenient to not think about things that are hard or the world around you that is built off of exploitation. And so, especially when media outlets desensitize us to violence that's happening across seas, we scroll, we nod, and we accept the two choices that are presented in front of us, Democrat and Republican. Does that mean I want an anti-democratic technocracy to steal from me? No. Just wanted to put that out there. Now, instead of silly democracy, here's what Land proposes. So Land and Moldbug propagate an ideology known as Neocamalism. And this concept essentially imagines government functioning like a corporation. See how he's adding like a capitalist function even to the government, this stupid thing that controls humans that he thinks are now outdated? Yeah, that's how he speeds it up. Okay, so the key elements are that states are run like private companies and citizens become more like customers or shareholders. Leaders function like CEOs. Characteristics include centralized authority, strong executive leadership, minimal democratic participation, and an emphasis on economic efficiency. Because his thesis is that capitalism was always going to run away from us, was always going to become this singular technology loop, let's make that shit happen faster. Let's keep going on the technology progress, but let's not give a fuck about the environment, animals, or human beings. Let's just let this shit run the whole show. Let's make it more focused on growing rather than, I don't know, let's fuck people. You know, that's his whole thing. And here's how they propose that society will change if things go according to their plan. Loss of faith in democratic institutions, emergence of technocratic corporate governance. Some propose creating private city-states or charter cities run by corporations. Another vision includes governance being replaced by algorithmic management, technocratic planning. Now, clavicular. Let's get back to you. Well, what would the easiest way be to expedite this process of the collapse of politics as something that even has a place in government affairs? It would probably be making politics into something that is void of weight and importance, and instead making it more like a stage for jesters to dance around on, making political ideology something to react to rather than to participate in, something for us to laugh at, something that feels so ridiculous that we can't even possibly begin to try to reform it anymore.
Sydney Sweeney.
Subhuman.
Sophie Wren.
Subhuman.
Piers Morgan.
Subhuman.
Andrew Jin.
Mog.
Cookie King.
Mog.
Barron Trump.
Mog.
Adam Ross.
Mog.
Epstein.
Mog.
Nick Fuentes, American Games, Seiko, Andrew Tate. What do these individuals all have in common besides the fact that they're balding? They are actively playing a part in the NRX agenda, whether they know it or not. I truly believe that politics is being muddied. It's becoming something that people can't even grasp anymore. I mean, just take a look at this clip of Nick Fuentes discussing his beliefs.
Never having a girlfriend, never having sex with a woman, really makes you more heterosexual. Because honestly, dating women is gay. Having sex with women is gay. And having sex with men is gay. And you know, it's all gay. And if you want to know the truth, the only really straight heterosexual position is to be an asexual incel. Now, boy era, okay? Not femboy. Let's get it straight. It was the catboy era. I miss it too. They bullied me out of it, you know? It was funny. And Vosh made up a bunch of nonsense about it. And then I had to capitulate for the sake of optics and say, no, we want to be trad and get married and women are awesome. So, yeah, it was awesome, wasn't it?
Millions of followers this guy has, guys. Millions of followers this guy has. It's no longer about decorum. It's no longer about being polished and saving face. It's more so about entertainment and making people laugh. Peter Thiel and Clavicular are homies, and that's something that...
Do you know who Peter Thiel is?
Peter Thiel, yeah. He's a billionaire that owns Palantir.
I got invited to a Peter Thiel party. You think that's going to be a Diddy party?
Billionaires need these jesters on the outside to entertain the masses as the world burns in front of us, as it's revealed to us that a cabal that eats children runs our government, right? This is how people get more and more desensitized. They need stuff to distract them, to sedate them. And this is Clavicular's place in all of it, whether he knows it or not. And what's crazy is, in the Landian spirit, they're all doing it for money. Whether they have a stake in the politics of it all, it doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, they're getting paid and the system is backing them. The system is amplifying this new wave of anti-politics politics in a way that at the end of the day serves capital and capital only. None of these people know that by the end of this, when Land gets what he wants, we'll all be serving capital. We'll all be serving technology. Humans are only a placeholder in this kind of runaway system. And that's why we don't need it anymore. Let it go. Let's do something else, guys, you know? Moldbug and Land were some of the first guys to outline this trajectory that we are on the path of. And when they did, it took to places like Reddit and 4chan. And there were groups of people online who found that they too would take part in this propelling towards towards the techno-capital singularity. So how did they do that? They would propagate political nonsense, truly. These guys took it upon themselves to saturate their language in sarcasm to the point where the meaning of their language simply became inconstruable. That was the goal. No one knew exactly what the other was saying because all of it was laced in sarcasm, and the whole bit was to not break the bit. And this is how these communities would start. There's a certain podcast that I'm forgetting the name of where they just go at it and they put it online, and it went viral in these communities that were mainly composed of incels. And this, to me, seems like the precursor to what we're seeing now on the internet.
You want to find the lost city of Atlantis? Well, hang in there, bud. Because together, we're gonna find it. Here at Tech Wars 2.0. Well, here at Tech Wars 2.0. The lost ancient cities of your ancestors' past will be brought to the horizon of our surface-level panopticon. Boof and Warren won't do you wrong. You can break the cuffs just like I did here at Tech Wars 2.0.
I mean, we know that these things are inevitable, that we're in the Kali Yuga stage of decline, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. There's some sense you can accelerate it, but even that's not something that you have so much direct individual agency towards. And most what you can do is try to achieve a localized independence, a good life for yourself and your children, a homestead out in a field somewhere quiet, while everything burns in hell.
And memes too have just expedited this process. When you get into the rabbit hole of the Wojak, it just starts to make less and less sense. It becomes all about lore, all about being deep in it, and it gets all confusing. But the through line is a dark hole of apathy and despair and anger that has exploded on the internet and now is helping Land's goal in making the general populace disillusioned with good, with a path towards. So he's succeeding. For now, but not I'm still here. So I'm here to say this, guys. There's a solution and there's an alternative, but we've got to pave it. The issue is that we don't got the system on our side. We don't got the system out here funding the creation of meme pages. We don't have that, but we do have appeal. I mean, first of all, leftists are pretty hot, and that's a good thing. Listen, leftists are likable. Why? Because we actually like people. The problem is the world can get really annoying when you're a leftist, when no one else is a leftist, and people are starting to give up on good. But we can't let that get us down. What's my thesis, guys? What's our conclusion? Make memes. I'm dead ass. Make memes. And I have an entire layout for you. Solar pump. Aesthetics might be the way that we pave our way to freedom. You know, these fascist, groyper, NRX freaks are dominating the reactionary space because damn is there a lot to just look at and marvel at. Like it's insane. Money may be power in some sense, but so is what we have. So is our knowledge of the good news that is, this is not the only way. Solar punk exists. The alignment of technology and the environment is the fantastical new world that you might have dreamt about as a kid. It's the kind of world that you would color with pastels and think, yeah, this is what it looks like when I look outside my window. Solar punk is like the rose-colored glasses you were wearing before society made you into an individual. When society tried to strip you of this creativity, of this freeness that comes with authenticity. And so we need to tap back into that and express it once again. You need to find those outlets in your life and put them on the internet. The internet is mimetic in that it spreads and iterates and things catch on. That's why I'm here and that's why I'm doing this, right? Solar punk will catch on because I've seen it with my own eyes. We are tapping into some kind of memorabilia that has been lost, that has been buried down in the capitalist fog that Peter Thiel is trying to propel us into, okay? When you think about the billions and billions and billions of dollars that the sexual predators that run our country are hoarding, the slave labor that was never recompensated for, all of it, you begin to realize that we own so much. We own so much. It's just in the hands of a couple hundred families. Our new world is very, very possible. We just have to take it. We get the pleasure of designing it, figuring out what it will look like. And, that's kind of fun. Listen, guys, I've cracked the code for you. You just need to reject despair. You need to think about how sick as fuck it would be to ride a hoverboard to class, except you're not learning about fucking, trigonometry. Okay? You need to remind yourself what freedom would taste like, what all the arbitrary rules this society imposes on you is doing to your ability to self-actualize. That's where you get the spirit. And from there, that's where you get the joy that we are heading toward. That's what solar punk is. So I'm ready. Are you? And fuck clavicular. Fuck him. Seriously.